Hey, what's up, y'all? It's G or Gari. I answer to both. On the internet, you can find me at Don't Undersalt, either here on YouTube or on Instagram. So in last week's episode, I introduced you guys to my quest to learn everything there is to know about one of my favorite dishes, Kadhi Chawal. Now, as I'm researching and finding out all the different variations there are from my favorite at-home comfort food, I'm also trying my best to learn how to make it myself. Let's rewind to a couple weeks ago. Today, I'm going to show you one of my all-time favorite recipes. I grew up eating this dish both at my home in America and when I visit my family in India. Now that I'm an adult, I'm learning how to make this delicious dish myself. And lucky me, I have one of my favorite people that I love to make curry for right here with me.
Hello.
Say hi.
Hi.
Are you excited to eat Kadhi?
Yeah.
All right, go play. First, I'm gonna take some full-fat yogurt. You can get any kind of full-fat yogurt you have available at your grocery store, or if you visit a local Indian store like the Patel brothers, they're all over the US, you can get desi dahi. Add that in, and I'm gonna masala this boy up. So I'm gonna grab my handy-dandy Indian spice tray and get going. A little bit of salt, a little bit of cumin powder, a little bit of turmeric, some amchur powder, which is basically dried mango powder, and some ground coriander. We're gonna add some water. Once the water is added in and you have all of your masalas, you want to get this all working with a nice little whisk. There's one other secret ingredient that one of the cooks at my Masi's house taught me for my kadhi batter. He says to add a little chaat masala. So in India, when we say that khana is chatpat, we mean it's a little bit tangy, it's a little bit tart, and there's something about the umami of the dish that makes everything a little bit better when it's got some chatpat to it. So chaat masala is a great way to add that flavor in. Give it a little sprinkle. Again, you can get this at any local Indian grocery store. Now that that's all incorporated into a nice smooth mixture, we're gonna add in our basen, which is chickpea flour. This is gonna add to the color, and it's also gonna add to the thickness of your gravy. So like most things Punjabis do, our curry is usually thick and indulgent and really rich. It's so yum. So now that you have your kadhi batter ready to go, we're gonna set that aside and get our onions working. All right, you're gonna start by adding some desi ghee to the pan. You want it to get really hot so your masalas have a good amount of time to roast up in there, release their flavors, and get ready to take on the kadhi. So while the ghee starts to heat up, I can already hear it starting to sizzle. Now that the ghee is bubbling and ready to go, I'm gonna toss in my onions. Get those moving around in the pan. You really want the ghee and the onions to be screaming hot when you add in the masalas. Honestly, it's looking a little dry, so I'm gonna add a little bit more ghee in there to really let my onions have a chance to sweat. It's okay to add things as you go along to adjust when you see things aren't working right. That's sort of how I've always cooked, especially because a lot of the times I'm making stuff up on the fly. So the onions are nice and bubbly in there. They're starting to get a bit translucent, and the ghee is really nice and hot. So I'm gonna add in our masala. So we're gonna start with some kalonji, a couple sprinkles of those. Now remember guys, when I cook, I don't measure anything. I kind of just so measure with my hand. But all of my recipes at the bottom will give you a general rule of thumb of what your quantity should be when you're trying this at home yourself. So I just added in some cumin seed. I'm gonna give that a little stir and continue down the line. Now I'm adding in a little bit of fennel. This isn't something that everyone does in their Punjabi curry, but we do it in our house and I love it. Little bit of black mustard seed. Don't go overboard. You are gonna add mustard seed later on in your tadka as well. Then we're gonna add some hing. I need to do a little bit more research about exactly what this is, but we basically put it in all of our food at home and it just makes everything taste that much better. I think it acts like umami. All right. And then the final hard spice that you're gonna add in now is methi dana, or fenugreek seed. Don't wanna go crazy with these, tend to be a bit bitter. Now we're gonna give that another stir, and we really wanna let this fry down and release all of the spices. If you don't let it cook for long enough, the spices taste kacha, or raw, which has happened to me on a couple of my kadhi runs. A lot of really good dishes, this is a bit of a labor of love. You do have to wait for your onions to really cook down. You really want those spices to fry on it. You're just gonna keep stirring it, making sure it doesn't burn, and letting it get to its prime goodness. All right, my onions are looking about halfway there, so I'm gonna grab one last ingredient to throw in with that. I'm gonna go pick some curry leaves off the tree in the yard. I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm back with the kadhi leaves. Don't worry, Shia Didi, I washed them. All right, so we're just gonna peel those off, in with the onions, a little bit of that sizzle. Give it a couple more for good measure. If you're in America and wondering where you're gonna get kadhi leaves, I see it in grocery stores all the time. When I do see them fresh, I generally buy a bunch and freeze them. You just take them out, defrost, pat them dry, and you're good to go. All right, guys, my onions are nice and brown. My spices are all ready to go. It's time to add in the batter. Oh yeah, baby. I don't want to waste any of that, so I'm going to give it one final scrape. And now we start to stir. So the thing about kadhi, I mentioned, it's a bit of a labor of love. And stirring is so important. We're gonna keep stirring this pot until this baby comes to a nice boil. If you don't keep stirring, what will happen is your yogurt will start to break, and what you will be left with is this curdly, broken sauce. I did it once before. I have to admit, it wasn't great. The curry is starting to thicken up and starting to get really nice and golden yellow. I have a feeling that this is gonna be one of my best batches yet. Hopefully I didn't jinx myself. Always stirring the pot. All right, guys, the kadhi has been simmering away and it's almost ready to roll. The last step is adding the tadka. A tadka is basically the last flavor bomb put in most Indian dishes. For the tadka for today's kadhi, we're using a select few spices that are usually used in our home when we make tadka on kadhi chawal days. So we're gonna start with, of course, some desi ghee. Add that into your screaming hot tadka pan. You can use a regular little pan if you don't have one of these little bowls. Let the ghee get smoking and start to really melt down. This is where things get a little tricky. We're gonna add in a little bit of rye seed, some cumin, really gonna start to sizzle and pop, 2 red chilies, and some of that patti hui mirchi. So it's now all smoking. We're gonna give it a little shake, and bam, right into the pan. All right, I got my little taste tester ready to go. Give it a taste, Q.
That's good.
Do you think it's as good as the one at school?
Probably.
All right, y'all. So I fried up these pakoras a little while ago. They've gotten cold while I was getting ready for my kadhi. So I just dipped them in some hot water, let them soak up some of that liquid. Now they're soft and ready to soak up even more of that golden, delicious kadhi. Let's go. So drop those in. Stir. I always serve mine with chawal. Since filming that night's kadhi chawal making session, I've been working on my kadhi chawal recipe like a mad woman. I've got the spices down for the base. I'm just working on the tadka, so I'm not quite ready to share the recipe yet. So this week, in lieu of giving you a recipe, I'm giving you some helpful tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. I've also included some links to some online recipes for Punjabi kadhi. What you'll notice is they might give you the ingredients and the measurements. They'll also give you part of the process, but they'll never tell you those tricky things to look out for. That's a big problem with the documentation of Indian cooking. Anyways, give it a peep, give kadhi a try, and if you're a kadhi queen already, school us. Drop us with some comments, some helpful tips and tricks to make your perfect version of Punjabi kadhi. See you next time. Peace.